GatewayCon? What is GatewayCon? The Gateway to Publishing Conference and Convention, brought to you by St. Louis Writers Guild, is a new, unique experience for writers looking for their work to be either traditionally published, independently published, self-published, or to further their writing career. Coming in June 2017, GatewayCon will provide opportunities for writers to pitch their work to agents, hone their craft regardless if it is genre fiction or nonfiction, and obtain expert critiques. Get to meet vendors and experts who can help your writing get attention. And all writers get their work in front of their audience. Writers will get to network with agents, publishers, and others in your genre. Gateway to Publishing Conference and Convention will be in St. Louis, June 16th through the 18th, 2017. For more information, visit www.stlwritersguild.org or look for GatewayCon on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. GatewayCon, opening the gateway for writers to reach their readers.
Right Pack Radio, a podcast produced by Winding Trails Media. For writers, by writers.
Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack. Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host and producer, David Allen Lucas, author of Crazy Things, constantly busy and got some updates. Number one, re-listening to one of our earlier podcasts, I was talking about how I was going to have a military sci-fi ready by September. Well, somehow that got changed. It's still going to be ready by September, but now it's really a space western.
That's quite a change.
That's quite a change. Yes, I've gone from the sci-fi mystery to the space western / crime drama. Yeah. Just to say that story was stronger as I was working on it versus the other one. Not done with the other one. It will come out eventually. Just, I've got a problem with it and have to think past it.
That's an overlapping interest demographic. Space western versus sci-fi military drama.
Yeah, I'm still working on the knife fighting book, which is a completely different demographic, maybe. Anyway, with us also is...
Hi, I'm Kathleen Kayembe. I write romance under the pen name Kaseka and Vita. And under my own name, I've got a short story coming out in Nightmare Magazine in March called You Will Always Have Family, a triptych.
Cool.
I am Chanel Etienne. I write sci-fi and fantasy.
Brian R. Cook, author of Steampunk and Other Fine Fare. You can find my books at bradrcook.com. They are Iron Horseman, Iron Zulu, and now Iron Lotus. Please check it out. It's on shelves. It rocks. And then you can also find me on the Writer's Lens, blogging about writing.
I'm Melanie Lucas, and I'm finally back to fantasy writing. Yay!
Yay! I finally got her there.
Kind of. And I also write sci-fi and nonfiction. Okay. And yes, this is Mark rubbing against all of our legs and coming in for petting.
Any noise you hear may be Mark Twain or Pumpkin.
They are kittens.
And they are cats, by the way.
Happiness.
Not goats.
I say that fast enough and it sounds like Mark Twain has pumpkins.
If you hear any noise, it's because Mark Twain is moving pumpkins in the background.
Exactly.
We've
resurrected him just for our occasion.
Well, he sells pumpkins
there's a new
for us.
story of discovering him a
there
children's
is
story,
a new Mark Twain
which
story
is the Prince of Oleomargarine or something like that. I'm eager to hear it because he didn't write down his children's stories.
We get brand new Mark Twain this year.
Yeah.
Okay, so no matter anything else going on in the world, 2017 will be excellent just because of that.
Yes.
Okay, and speaking of excellent,
I am Fedora Amos. I write Victorian whodunits like Jack the Ripper in St. Louis and Mayhem at Buffalo Bill's Wild West. And I am president of Greater St. Louis Sisters in Crime.
Also with us today is...
My name is Jennifer Stolzer. I'm a children's book author and illustrator. My premiere fantasy novel, Threadcaster, is out in March. Check the interwebs for that, threadcaster.com. And this week I'm going down to the Shoelace Factory in St. Louis, which is part of the City Museum, to buy a whole lot of cat's cradle threads to give away as bonuses for buying the book on the day of release.
I want one.
Can you get rainbow ones?
I don't know what colors they're going to be, but I'm wearing mine around my wrist as a bracelet, and it's purple and pink. So there you go.
Yeah. We'll all be fashioning them come late March.
Yeah.
There you go.
Real quick, I want to jump in before we start. Assume this is airing in February?
In September? Yeah, in
That's
September.
Pretty far away.
September, that's a good one.
This is still season 3. Season
Anyway,
4 soon.
Point being, in March at St. Louis Writers Guild's annual monthly meeting, I should say, we are going to be doing sit down and pitch. I should say I'm going to be doing sit down and pitch. We're going to be getting people ready for both the Missouri Writers Guild conference, if you're going to that, and also for Gateway Con coming up in June.
June
And
16th through 18th.
Any of the conferences you might be going to, it's free to attend. None of the usual $5 or anything like that. So if you're going to a conference this year and you want to know how to pitch to an agent or how to write a query letter, come to the Guild's meeting and you will learn, and we will have a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yay.
And David just told us that this is a milestone episode. What is it, David?
Well, I'm glad you led right into it because that's what I was about to say. Welcome to episode 150.
150!
I'll be honest, when we first started this, I didn't think we'd be going this long. Actually, I didn't think we'd get
I
past
didn't think we'd
episode
come up with
50.
150 things to talk about.
I sat back going, are we really doing this? Yes, we're really doing this. So, anyway, this is episode 150, and we are going to talk today about the pillars of storytelling. This is actually coming from an article called, the article's from the Writer magazine. It was published September 1, 2013, written by Peter J. Fox. The title is Write a Strong Screenplay Upon These Pillars. Building a strong screenplay based on 5 key elements of storytelling can bring your film idea to life. Now, as far as I'm concerned, writing is writing. And I will say, I know we don't get to do screenplay stuff too often in here. But I like to take screenplay classes just because I get a different viewpoint of writing in our writing processes.
Well, if it applies to a screenplay, it's certainly going to apply to
Exactly.
any fiction, I think.
Mostly, there's a
Mostly.
few little differences.
No, of course there
Well,
is.
no.
But that's the fun part.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
it's
say.
a guy who started writing plays and became a playwright before he became a novelist.
There you go.
It is an art form unto its own. Yet I have to admit they completely carry over. So
I also think it might be interesting if David told our listeners a bit about how he writes his first drafts, because I found that fascinating. It has a lot to do with screenplays.
Yeah, actually, okay, I am completely, totally insane. I do not recommend this process to anyone but me. However, with that said, I know we're recording today, and this is going to be aired in the future. With every medical thing was going on this week and everything else, I didn't get as much time to write. But the 2 days in which I actually had a good chunk of time to write, one day I was able to pull 7,100 plus words,
Whoa.
and the other day I was able to pull over 4,000.
Nice.
And roughly give you an idea of how fast that is. Going my typing, my creativity typing speed versus dictation is 900 words an hour, give or take. That's how fast that was going, and I actually had a hour and a half in there on the 4,000 day because I was stuck in trying to get past a certain issue. Which, unfortunately, George, who is not here today, I would love to say thank you because he got me through that part. He gave me an idea, and I just took and it just crystallized and took off. So what I do is my first draft, I write it pretty much like an audio or screenplay. They are a little different, really more closer to an audio play than screenplay format. I write it as if mostly all dialogue, as if it's a screenplay. I say screenplay because I have special effects that I use as description. That's the lines I use for description. So in other words, opening scene as it is now in what's going to be called Hearn's Bounty. It's about a bounty hunter who's a veteran of the war who's turned bounty hunter. He can find 1,000,000 causes worth dying for. He has to find a cause worth living for. And it opens up the opening. It's not an opening line. It just opens up the special effects for description is desert region of a planet. Windmills are going. You've got moisture collectors, and farmers are fighting against reclaiming the desert. And two things are on motorcycle style hover bikes. One is Hearn, the other one is a robot, and I go straight into dialogue. That whole entire special effects, I will come around third draft, and that's why I will start filling in my narration. My first draft is, as I've already described. Second draft, I go through the dialogue and look at the dialogue and the action and see if it really is fitting my characters and make my rewrites. Then I start to go into descriptions and so forth. That's just me. It's. I believe Jen has referred to it often as the color printer method.
It's the offset printer method.
The offset printer method, yes.
Because you go through with different passes and lay down different colors.
Uh-huh.
Just like a large offset printer would go through and lay down all of the cyan colors and all of the magenta colors and all of the yellow colors and then all the black colors, and when you put it all together it makes one image.
Yep, that's exactly what I do. And since this is not talking about that method, this whole episode's not, I'll just say one last thing. I do not worry about perfection until I get to final draft. That's where I'm going to be worried about it. At this point in time, perfection is my enemy.
So I wanted to know, because you did mention you take screenplay classes, and this article that we're talking about today is about writing screenplays. Do you find things like the 5 pillars in this episode, in this article, or the screenplay classes you take help you to develop your story better in that first draft so that then you can layer in more, but the structure is already there?
Well, let's go through the 5 pillars, but before I avoid the question completely, the answer is yes. I actually do find that the screenplay method of writing really has helped get me out of my box, my rut, whatever you want to call it, that I was in. And it's allowed me to play and go faster. I mean, I was doing it technically before my rut, but I made so many different changes to processes and so forth. This is what helped kick me back out. And I mean, that rut lasted for too many damn years.
We've said that a lot of things do translate between screenplay form and fiction as far as making a good story. But as I think Brad mentioned, they are different. They do require different things of a writer.
Yes, they really do. There's a difference in the viewpoint, and I guess we're going to talk more screenplays. Then we'll get to the 5 pillars, I promise. I'm not a professional screenplay writer. I don't claim it. I don't want to claim it. I do write audio plays, and check out Winding Trails Media. There's none up yet, but I've got a lot of podcasts about how to write audio plays. Just the audio plays are stuck in production right now. But where I was going is, when you're writing a novel, you're spending a lot of time in narrator's voice, and you're spending a lot of time in your character's voices and so forth. You still have narrator voice in writing a screenplay, but the narrator voice is a lot more open, in my opinion, because, let me use an example. Jen is currently, while she's participating in the conversation, she's typing or drawing. She's typing right now.
I'm resizing dogs on dog products.
There you go. Okay.
www.jensdogscustom.com.
Get a dog mug of your dog. I love mine.
Go get leggings with 10 million pugs on them, because I'm going to approve that product in about 3 seconds.
Okay. So if I was writing that, I would say Jen is okay. If I was writing as a novel. Sorry, Jen, I'm going to pick on you just because you're there.
Hey, I'm participating.
Jen bites her lower lip as she stares intent. I'm really making this horrible, so rough draft.
I'm not doing any of this.
She was a second ago. Jen was biting her lower lip as she intensely stared into the computer, deciding what to do. Okay, I just made that really horrible.
How many thousand pugs need to be on this pair of leggings?
Okay, see, there you go. And that would be her dialogue. Whereas, if I did that as a screenplay, Jen, parenthesis, all in caps, somehow concentrating.
Somehow.
Serious look.
I don't know how.
Serious look. Actually, I like that better.
Yeah, concentrating.
Concentrating, serious look. Close parenthesis. Dialogue is, how many thousands of pug pictures do I need on leggings? So,
The answer is as many as you can fit.
right. The reason I like doing the screenplay version is I don't have to sit here and try and come up with any purple prose or even semi-decent narrative speak to describe Jen as concentrating. That's going to be later. Jen, concentrating. Boom. I'm going straight into her action as she types. Does that answer your question? As
Words
Kathleen
hard.
plays with a cat?
I'm trying to get the cat not to chew on plastic.
Yeah, well, we know
Good
that.
luck with that.
So,
Figure
yeah, that does
You
answer my
write a book, you
question.
make $1
Okay.
million.
So, we should get to the pillars, though.
Yes. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about the 5 pillars. They are, I'm going to give all 5 and then we're going to go through them and talk about them.
The
According to
first
this
pillar
author,
is have a cat.
That is
No, it's
none
not.
of the
This is
pillars.
why I haven't gotten an agent yet.
no cats.
No cats. Although, if you want to get a pair of leggings with 10,000 cats on them, I'll approve it in the next 5 minutes.
Okay, back to seriousness. As if I ever had control, which I never do. I only produce this stuff. I don't control it. The 5 pillars are actually cinematic conflict, and they are problem of conscience, it's not fair, facing the mountain, stand and deliver, life or death. And the article goes on to say, any good movie, any good screenplay, is going to have at least one of these 5 pillars at the center of the story. And when I say pillars, once again, cinematic conflicts. So let's talk about those. Problem of conscience, it's not fair, facing the mountain, stand and deliver, life or death. I'm going to throw out a question with that. Are there any others?
I don't know. These seem to be like internal character conflicts. I just want to put that out there. The examples that he gives in the article are all kind of internal in some way, except for life or death. That one's a little more external, but the others seem to be internal.
See, I'm going to debate with it. I don't completely disagree with you when I'm going to debate you on this one, because yes, there is an internal aspect to, say, problem of conscience. But let's throw out some old movies. Who in here has seen Run Silent, Run Deep?
No, sir.
Okay.
I raised
Wow.
my hand.
Okay, Brad at least and I have. Or how about the Caine Mutiny?
What about that new war movie that's coming up about the Medal of Honor winner, the Ridgeback Mountain or whatever?
Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know
Ridgeback
enough about it
Mountain.
to say conscience, but as far as conflict of conscience on the outside, that's why I chose these 2 movies. Actually, technically, Star Wars Rogue had a little bit of it, and that is. Anyway, what I was going to say is with Run Silent, Run Deep, you had a situation where the submarine was going into a combat situation which the first officer didn't think the captain was able to pull off. The captain was having, shall we say, psychological issues underneath, and there's a point where he actually knocks out the captain while it's, if I remember the movie right, while it's dark, when they lose power. Another one, Caine Mutiny, is a whole entire do they do mutiny. This is the middle of war. Do they have a weird captain? Do they commit mutiny? And I'm going to let you guys watch the movie. Go ahead.
Mine's different. Go ahead with
Okay.
whatever you're doing.
So the conflict of conscience is, do they allow themselves to be put into harm's way for no reason at all, or do they put themselves in harm's way by committing a form of mutiny? Which is
We could have just used the Rocky reference.
I could have used Rocky reference, but I was going for something a little more dramatic.
Well, I think it might be helpful to our listeners to read the Rocky references too.
Okay, fine. Let's do the Rocky reference.
Since we don't know any of those movies.
Okay, yeah. So let's talk about Rocky.
Problem of conscience. At
Go
the
for
end
it.
of Act 2, on the night before the big fight, having visited the empty cavernous arena, Rocky comes to grips with the reality that he will not be able to beat Apollo Creed. He shares this with Adrian. "Who am I kidding?" he says. and I'm not going to try to do Rocky's voice.
Good.
His conscience has been awakened by the gravity of his situation. This cinematic beat is used to change the direction of the story when Rocky repurposes his goal from winning to simply surviving.
Mm.
And that's really what it is. It's that conscience of, yourself, the problem of having to deal with your own conscience in the story, like as the main character.
Go ahead.
One of my favorites would come from The Maltese Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody who hasn't seen it ought to see it. It is a wonderful old movie.
Read the book too.
It's a Dashiell Hammett, and in it, Sam Spade has his partner. His partner is killed by someone, and it's his job, of course, to find him. And he has other things to do in the meantime as well. Eventually, of course, he finds out who has killed his partner, but it happens to be a woman that he's fallen in love with in the meantime. And so his conscience problem, or his life problem, whatever you want to call it, is should he go with this woman that he knows has murdered his partner and have a life, which he hasn't really had up to that point anyway, or should it be that he avenges his partner? And what he ends up saying is he weighs out both things of the good that it might be with her, but when a man's partner dies, he has an obligation to do something about it. I have to do something about it.
Yep.
So he turns her in,
Good
and
scene.
that's an ultimate act of conscience, which may seem completely unreasonable from a lot of points of view. But if your partner dies, you have to do something about it.
Are you saying marrying that killer is not doing something about it?
No.
Of course it wouldn't
Unless you
be.
get a marriage as a punishment, in which case I think it's appropriate.
No.
I will be the worst husband ever.
I'm going to talk about another
Humphrey
movie.
Bogart is bad.
Oh yeah, he really is.
Right, you don't even think that he would have a conscience,
No.
much less that it would go in that direction.
Exactly.
It's more of a principle than a conscience, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I don't know if this
Isn't
Just-
a
it
principle the exponent of conscience?
I guess,
Isn't it really
I
the
guess
same thing?
my line draws more on it being an emotional decision versus a principled decision. Like, he wasn't...
Really?
Yeah, he wasn't looking, he says, oh, well, I choose to go with her because I love her and my feelings are more important versus something has to be done when this thing happens and my emotions aren't as important as the thing that needs to be done. So principle versus
Well,
an emotion.
that's why it's a sacrifice and why it's a matter of conscience.
So I'm going to use another movie, and one I know nobody else in here has probably seen. I don't think the movie was all that well done, though it has some great actors in it, including the late John Hurt. Wasn't actually, he was a bad guy, but the conflict of conscience as far as an issue. The movie was called From the Hip. It technically starts off a lot like a comedy drama, courtroom drama. And in it, Judd Nelson is a character named Stormy Weathers, which should
That's
tell you
terrible
right off the
name.
bat it's going to be a comedy. But there's a part that gets a little too serious. But it is that part that actually is the problem of conscience comes into play. After stealing his first real case, he's been a clerk for a long time. He actually kind of sort of works with the he's a defense attorney, but he works with the prosecution on trying to set up their court case together. So technically they didn't do anything wrong, but yes, technically they did because they collaborated, which you shouldn't do. He gets a murder case, and this murder case is where the character played by John Hurt has supposedly committed murder. He gets pulled over in his car and arrested. And the whole entire defense lies over whether or not John Hurt's character would know that he was sitting above a bloody hammer. That's what was used to kill him, to kill the person, the victim. And kind of giving you a little bit of humor with this. And I'm going to warn everybody, it's going to go slightly rated R.
Does he put a bloody hammer below the jury box or
no.
something?
What he does is he's cross-examining the detective, if I remember how this is going correctly, and asked point blank, "Would you know that you're sitting above?" Yeah, so you're saying you would know that you're sitting above a bloody hammer. Detective saying, "Of course I would." Blah blah blah, and then Judd Nelson's character goes, "Just like you know you're sitting above a caged rabbit." Reaches underneath the witness chair and pulls out a caged rabbit and puts it on the witness stand. Well, the prosecuting attorney, here's where it's going to go rated R. Starts going up, Your Honor, doing objection. So Judd Nelson keeps talking over him and goes, "Just like how you don't know what might be inside the prosecuting attorney's briefcase." Opens it up, pulls out a dildo, turns it on because it's an electric dildo, and it's vibrating on the table. And the judge, and the prosecuting attorney is going, Your Honor. And the judge, who is a black lady, goes, "Don't look at me, it's not mine." And the attorney ends up putting it back into his own briefcase, which caused everybody to crack up.
Oh my god.
So all this is leading up, all this humor. Well, Judd Nelson's character finds out his client really did do it. Really did do the murder. And now he's stuck in a situation of conscience, which a lot of attorneys are going, "Well, I already know what I need to do. My job is to get my client off." Anyway, that's what he deals with, is whether or not he actually sets up his client to admit on the stand, because his client is determined he's going to testify, and risk himself getting disbarred, or if he will try to get this client off on murder.
I think these are all wonderful examples, even though I'm not sure conscience is quite the right term for all of these. However, what makes this kind of character conflict interesting in a story? Like, so it's one pillar. Do you really need it? Why would you add it? What makes it so juicy for a reader to read?
It's emotional. There's a huge emotional undercurrent with this storyline.
Agreed.
And with it comes that emotional turmoil of not only the act of what do I do, what am I going to do with the act that's coming, but then after the act happens, what have I done, and all that kind of back and forth that you get with that. So it's all internal. You get that wonderful internal conflict resonating through people. But I think that's why, and I think that's going to be the answer for a lot of these. But I think it's one of the reasons why this particular one is so used by Hollywood so often.
Go ahead and Fedora next.
Internal conflict, I would always think of like the prose, the written word as a better way of showing internal conflict, but this is about screenplays, so
Depends on who you cast in your movie.
Actors love internal conflict because it gives them a chance to act.
Yeah, it really does.
This is where they win Oscars, or at least get nominated for something.
Because it makes them, it's the ultimate humanity of it. Yeah. It's not just people blowing up stuff and crashing cars and having chases. All of that is all physical and it's all entertaining, but it's not terribly human.
And it's not artistic.
And the issue of conscience is very particularly human. We don't think parrots have consciences or dogs, but we certainly think humans do, and that's how we identify with them.
At least we hope they do.
Some of us do, right, Kat?
My dog knows when he done wrong. And cats that knock things off the table, you don't want him to do it.
Yeah, that's fear of punishment, though, I think, or for seeking your approval rather than an issue of actual conscience.
Oh, I was going to say, you mentioned car chases and like physical action. So is there a place for this kind of internal conflict in a very physically driven movie? Because Rocky's about a boxing match.
Yes.
But he's the person.
Well, yeah.
It's not about the match per se, beating each other up. It's about how he feels about it.
Take a look at the latest Rocky movie, Creed, where Apollo's son, illegitimate son, ends up seeking out Rocky to train him to box. He's been learning on his side, on his own way, but he's determined to make a name for himself. There's a lot of different conflicts in there, but the one which I'm gripping onto is the fact that Rocky doesn't want to train anybody. He doesn't want this kid to go the way Apollo did, because Apollo died, and Apollo was like his best friend.
This is the storyline of Avatar.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the biggest sci-fi movies of all time. This is the storyline where, he infiltrates this, native group, so that they can be exploited and better, killed off, or at least to get to the resources or whatever. And he ends up deciding, I really like these people, and now I have a conscience against the organization of which I've worked for and brought me here and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows you to put in a really thought-provoking storyline that has an emotional resonance to it and all that kind of fun stuff in almost any kind of genre, from your hard-hitting, indie movie that's R-rated and only meant for, old people to, go on a Saturday night, to the giant popcorn movie that every teenager is supposed to run out and see that weekend.
Yeah.
So these pillars can be used for any genre then?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Some are just more heavily relied on in certain genres than others. Art house movies almost always have some conscience.
Well, every lawyer flick out there has this one. I mean, this is the lawyer movie.
The client.
Or the financial movie, or the governmental, bureaucratic movie. Anything that's going to put into that, you're going to find this particular storyline just because it resonates so well like that.
I have a question. If your character that you're trying to write from the point of view of is a psychopath, they don't have empathy, so could you do conscience, or would you just be best to avoid it?
Looks like you have an answer.
Well, I have a musing kind of related to that direction, because I think the whole reason that sort of the issue of conscience is because it's so easily latched onto by anyone. Anyone can sort of see, this is what option A, this is option B. I can see that both of these are mutually appealing, and oh no, what are they going to do? It's something that just about everyone can sink their teeth into and relate to your character. However, in the instance that you have a character that is not socially or psychologically sound enough to be relatable, does it still work?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm saying, okay, clearly,
same question I had.
right. So basically, I think that in order for this to work, you have to have something for your reader, viewer base to be able to sink their teeth into. Otherwise, you kind of lose them. And I'm not certain that if your character is a sociopath, unless you do some serious back work on that you would be able to set up the dichotomy of, this is a good choice, this is a good choice, oh no, what do I do, and have it really resonate.
Where you'll see it a lot is not necessarily in the killer, but in the people around the killer, i.e.,
the mother of a killer.
Well,
How do you deal with it?
What I was thinking of is actually the killer themselves, or the detective who's coming after them, i.e., Basic Instinct or something like that. Or Hannibal Lecter in some of his. He doesn't, but the people around him do, have that conscience.
And the audience will always have that conscience.
Mm-hmm.
You're using that conflict
So
to
the conflict
awaken.
Is, does the dog live? Does he let the...
Well, whether the dog lives or not isn't really a choice of conscience.
No.
But if you want to give that sort of example, if there's, if he has the opportunity to save a dog from being killed and he consciously makes a decision not to, then you're communicating things to the audience on a conscience level. But just because it's a conscience conflict doesn't mean that they have to make the good choice.
Right.
You can always make the bad choice. My favorite show of all time and my favorite character ever written, his entire arc is based on him making the bad choice and then trying desperately to make the good choice, because his whole arc is a crisis of conflict.
And what is that, Jen?
That's Babylon 5 with my precious baby Lana Millar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I haven't seen most of this series. I've seen most of season 1, but Dexter, though? Dexter is a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
He is the main character and the protagonist of a TV show and book series that I haven't read. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but he has a conscience.
No, he is
has
a
a code.
sociopath. He is a code.
Okay, he has a code, but the point is he has a conscience. It's just not him. It's his father's. It's the code that he got from his father, and he does what his father would want him to do.
But see, you asked if it was possible, and it clearly is.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking more in general, and I was thinking of Dexter. I already thought of Dexter. Dexter's the exception. He's the good serial killer type.
But it is definitely one way of using this kind of crisis of conscience in a sociopath.
But that's more of a crisis of conscience of his foster father, not a crisis of conscience of just.
But no, because he has to decide if he wants to follow this or not.
Well, that's true.
I find, based on what everyone seems to be saying, and the example that seems to be tossed around, that in these cases you kind of have to have a window into that mind that gives you a basis of where they're falling on the sliding scale of good, bad, right, wrong, etc. Because, like you said, without the someone else's conscience to guide this person's actions, would the reader or audience still be able to
There's plenty of external determinations to figure out this.
Or would they still be able to get invested enough in this character to make it worth it?
I'm gonna put a pin in this for a moment. I'm looking at the time, and we still have 4 more films to get through. Go for it.
Maybe
What's your
this could be
question?
I was literally going to say that.
Thank you. Yeah, see, we're on the same page. So if we get time, we'll jump back to it. But let's go with the next one. It's not fair. Since we want to stick with Rocky, let's stick with Rocky for a second. Near the end of Act 1, Rocky watches himself on TV with Paulie and Adrian. The message of the scene, he is being used by Apollo's camp as a publicity stunt, as if he were the punchline of a joke. Certainly, this is not fair.
I really don't like the examples they're choosing for this article.
I don't either. That's why I was choosing other ones.
So, a different one then. What's a different example of it not being fair that is a character conflict?
What about? Well, let's look at a book and a movie. To Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, we've got. I'm sorry, the character's name just went completely out of my head after I did that. Who's the guy who's accused of the crime?
A black man.
Yes.
I remember what his name is. That's
it
was different.
Sorry to my audience. I actually know of these answers. I just can't.
Walter something or other, I believe.
Yeah. Anyway, he's being accused of a crime he didn't commit because he's black. Scout's family is being looked down upon because they're defending a black man for committing this crime. Is this fair? No. So they could easily go against, do something different, let the man hang as it goes. Literally.
One of my favorite comedies, in fact, I think the greatest comedy of all time, is Some Like It Hot. Is it fair that poor Walter, that Lemon and Tony Curtis had to run away merely because they witnessed the St. Valentine's Day Massacre? No, but it sure made a heck of a good movie, as it was funny from then on as they turned into drag queens and met Marilyn Monroe on the beach and just had a grand time. But no, it's often, I think, a precipitating event. Something isn't fair, and so it must be addressed in some fashion to either create fairness or find a way around it. To avoid it or create fairness is, I think, a very typical plot in a lot of movies.
I was going to say Hidden Figures is the quintessential it's not fair movie.
Please no spoilers yet, because I want to see this.
No. I'm just going to tell you what you would be able to tell from the preview.
I know this. I know. I was saying.
So what is Hidden Figures? I haven't heard of this.
Hidden Figures.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, you have.
It is.
Go ahead.
Well, our audience might not.
Kathleen's going to explain it to you if you give her 3 seconds.
Thank you. So, Hidden Figures is about 3 black women in, I believe, the 60s who work for NASA. They are NASA computers. This is pre-computers or pre-computers in as widespread a fashion as they are now. And they basically they check all the proofs and the equations that people are doing to make sure everything is well, because the U.S. is trying to send someone into space before Russia.
They perform the same function that computers now serve today.
Yes.
And,
but they did it strictly with brain power.
Right. Which makes them amazing.
Yes.
Very much so.
But the situation at NASA is very much Jim Crow. Jim Crow is alive and well. These women work in a separate building from everyone else in like a basement, and it's not cute. It's not okay. It is definitely not fair, and you learn that within the first few minutes of the film when they get pulled over for being black and having a broken down car. So, you learn that immediately in the film, and the entire rest of the film, you're hoping that they will be able to do something to make things fair, and that is a huge part of the struggle they face. It's not fair. How do you get ahead? How do you get recognized for what you're capable of doing when everything is designed to keep you in the dark, and keep you down?
Mm-hmm. So I keep thinking this in terms of like, how does this affect the reader? How does the reader kind of latch onto this? You're constantly rooting for them to be able to find a way around it, for them to be able to overcome it, because everyone's had that situation where something isn't fair, and you would give your left leg to be able to fix it or to change it or to somehow circumvent this system that is not fair. And you kind of get to latch onto the hope that through this character they get to right it some way and everything is going to be okay, or sometimes it's not, but it's kind of like latching onto a basic human hope that when things aren't fair, you can fix them, maybe.
Hopefully. Yep. So go ahead, and one of you two.
I was gonna say that's one of the reasons I love fairy tales so much growing up, and why I still love them today. Like, Cinderella is a classic case of it's not fair. She is the rightful heir to her father and mother's estate. Stepmother comes in, basically turns her into a servant, treats her like crap, and her daughters and her own biological daughters wonderfully. And you're like, it's not fair. This is not fair. How is Cinderella going to get around this? And that's true for a lot of fairy tales. The daughter that's treated poorly gets treated fairly finally, or gets rewarded for their good behavior by an otherworldly force. So, yeah, it's not fair makes you very much invested in this character who's in a situation where they're down on their luck for some reason that is, unfair. You want them to get ahead.
Beauty and the Beast. It was fair. Beast was turned into Beast because he was awful.
That kid was 11.
But then,
He was 11 years old. He answered the door. He was kind of a dick to an old lady in the rain one night, and suddenly him and everyone in his staff.
Okay, the everyone in his staff part wasn't fair, but I always thought that he was older than 11.
It depends on the version you go with.
I'm going off Disney.
In Disney, he was certainly old enough to know better.
But Disney's based on the old.
He was
Disney's the one where he's 11 years old.
Yeah, the rose blooms until he's 21 years old.
Yeah, and
he has to find love before his 21st year, or else he's a beast forever.
The Little Mermaid was 16. I feel like we're scaling her now.
Don't dive that deep into the Disney hole, man.
Diving into the Little Mermaid. Oh,
no, but in the version of. Well, in the older versions of it, he was a terrible young man that got his comeuppance for being mean to a fairy.
But then what happens later is that Belle's father picks a rose for her, and it's not fair that then Belle is either going to go to the castle or her father is going to die. Mm-hmm. So again, you're rooting for Belle because it's not fair the situation she's in. How's she going to get out of it?
Okay, so the reason this is, and the reason why it's in every fairy tale and everything, this all falls down to, is exactly as we were saying earlier, hope. We all hate unfair situations. You were mentioning that. And the reason why we do is because we have an innate sense of wanting things to be equal and fair, and that kind of, desire. And humans have had this for a really, really, really long time. That hope springs forth, and that's what drives the story forward. So you're almost touching on one of the most basic human principles or human emotions with this storyline. However, I would almost say that this one of all of them is almost probably the most overused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In storylines, just because it is so often
just
something.
Because
It's something that we've all fallen back on for so long, and not being fair is a driving, motivating force within your story. That it's not cliche. That's not what I mean, but it's probably the most used.
How do you keep it from feeling stale then? I mean, it's mentioned as one of the 5 pillars of character conflict.
Well, and all of these are. I mean, we can sit around and throw around 1,000 different movies and 1,000 different stories for each one of these things. So it's always just how you're going to do it.
Yeah. So let's go on with the next one. Facing the Mountain. Rocky must do the impossible, and his character tells the audience exactly what this means in his moments with Adrian before the fight. No one has ever gone the distance with Creed. If that bell rings and I'm still standing, I know for the first time in my life that I'm not a bum. Okay, yes, I suck at doing Sylvester Stallone. I had to try. So, Facing the Mountain.
I have an example.
Yay!
If anyone has ever seen Serenity, which is a Joss Whedon film.
We've done the impossible, and that makes us mighty.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So one of the impossible things that happens in that movie is this space cowboy western kind of crew of an outlaw ship finds out the truth about a horrible atrocity that has been created by the government, basically. It's been committed by the government that is all-powerful. It is the Empire to their rebellion single ship. And they need to tell the world. And to be able to get to tell the world, get to a spot where they can send out the signal, they have to get back through an entire armada, basically, of ships full of crazy psychopaths.
Cannibalistic.
Yes.
Cannibalistic psychopaths.
And then, if they manage that, they have to get through an armada of government ships that want to squash this secret before it can get out. That is impossible. Mm-hmm. They have to do the impossible. And the entire time you're watching them try and do this thing, you're like, it's going to go wrong. It's going to go wrong. They're all going to die. It's going to go horribly.
Horribly wrong.
This is impossible.
Speaking of the evil Empire and Rogue One, they got those Death Star plans.
It's going to go wrong. It's going to go wrong. They're all going to die. This is impossible. It's going to go wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
They got the Death Star plans.
Yes.
This is a story. I mean, all of these are going to be stories about courage and about either overcoming or perhaps sacrificing. Take the Alamo, for example. Yeah. Travis dares people to stay, really, but he would let them go, and some of them do leave the Alamo because they know that staying there pretty much is certain death. Yep. They're surrounded by 2,000 Mexican soldiers. They're going to die if they stay, but they make that conscious decision, the courageous decision, in order to give time to the other Texas forces to get there. And they know that they won't survive it, though. So it's a story about courage, and that's always inspirational. Courage and self-sacrifice.
Also, I'll throw out 2 other examples. One is The Seven Samurai, the classic. And then finally, let me throw out the entire movie series, as well as a television series, that was based on that. And that is The Magnificent Seven. Any of them. Take your pick. I don't care which one you pick.
That was literally what I was going to bring up, The Magnificent Seven.
Yeah. Yes, Kathleen is absolutely hooked on the latest one. I don't blame her. I love it too.
Okay, I am a black woman, all right, and that film is about 7 men, and only 3 of them are white men. Everybody else is a minority, and I'm so pleased by that. The cast and director made a conscious decision to make the main cast as diverse as life is here in America, and as diverse as it actually was in the West.
I was going to say, as diverse as it actually was. It's a very powerful statement.
I thought that was great. And the decisions they made about each character were great. But what I wanted to talk about from the Magnificent Seven was the premise is these 7 people, based again on the 7 samurai, these 7 cowboys, basically, are trying to defend.
They're mercenaries, though, really.
Yes.
They think they're going to get money. At least some of them do.
Some of them.
So these 7 cowboy mercenaries are trying to defend a small and defenseless town, basically, against a man who wants to take over the town to make money and is going to use all of his considerable wealth to stomp them to the ground if they resist. Mm-hmm. So he can hire an armada of ships, but cowboys with horses, to do what he wants. And this town can only afford these 7 people.
Really,
all they
technically,
got.
they can't even afford that. If you really want to consider the amount of money. Take the original Magnificent Seven. That was even less money involved. The town was farmers, and they were being raided by bandits. Same concepts, though. Exact same thing. Okay, let's move on
Also,
because we're
the
running out of
three
time.
amigos.
Yes.
And apparently ants.
Okay, let's do Stand and Deliver. The montage sequence of Rocky's training regime and the fight itself visibly communicate Rocky's need to stand and deliver, pushing himself beyond all the previous limits out of necessity to survive.
Jon Snow, Game of Thrones!
Hi, bae.
Ryoni Kenshin! Zaitoichi! Okay,
So,
sorry. A whole
what's-
different group.
so Stand and Deliver, what makes this different from Facing the Mountain?
Well, number one, facing the mountain, you're facing impossible odds. In the case of standing and delivering, depending if it's a physical conflict, that's where I'm going to go with this. Your body is beaten. You are Frodo. It does not want to keep going. He's tired of carrying. So it is Frodo, right? Not Bilbo. Yeah,
Yes,
Frodo. He's tired of carrying the ring. And he wants to quit. He doesn't want to take that next step, but inside they find something inside themselves and say, "No, I got to keep going."
And his name is Samwell Candy. Samwell Candy.
Yes.
So, but Stand and Deliver is more about endurance.
Yeah.
Facing the mountain is more about impossible odds.
Yeah. Technically, I guess Sam picking up Frodo and carrying him up into Mordor is Stand and Deliver.
So one seems to be more externally driven, the impossible odds, and one is more internally driven. Can you make yourself go on?
Yes.
It's like the
Jeremiah Johnson, it'd be easier to just lie down and die,
Yeah.
but he doesn't.
So
It's
what's
like-
so?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go on.
I was gonna say it seems very much about the decision to, like, if you want to say the decision to take on those impossible odds, because, like you said, you could just lay down and die. You could turn tail and run the other way.
I don't think it's the decision to keep on. I think it's the decision to keep going, and it doesn't necessarily need to be impossible. So, for instance,
No, I'm saying that that's an example. It doesn't necessarily have to be as a result of that, but it's like you said. I think it speaks to fortitude and moral fiber, hardiness, etc. That this character gets up the gusto to continue doing whatever it is that needs to be done to achieve what they need to achieve.
Since we've been talking Rocky, and to go with exactly what you're saying, I'm going to call it a paraphrase because I don't know if I'll get the quote exactly right, but from Rocky is, doesn't matter how hard you punch, it's matter how hard of a punch you can take and keep going. Exactly.
So it sounds like, as Fedora was saying, with Facing the Mountain, with facing impossible odds, it's, do you have the courage to try and do this thing? And with Stand and Deliver, as Chanel was saying, it's about internal fortitude and will you continue when you are beaten so badly it would be easier to stop?
Yep.
and will you give up when the going gets tough?
Yep.
Or will you keep going?
Mm-hmm.
And in cases of those characters which see themselves as weak and thinking they would stop, there is a point of discovery that yes, they can keep going and that they will keep going. Okay, last one, in which we are getting close to the end. So, life or death. The bloody battle in the ring with Apollo Creed is indeed a fight for Rocky's life. After knocking his opponent down in the first round, Rocky has awakened the sleeping giant, who is now embarrassed and hell-bent on total destruction. From this point on, Rocky is fighting for his life. Go ahead.
Well, this is about an ultimate kind of moment, like in Speed with Keanu Reeves, and what the stakes are, because the stakes are extremely high. If they're going to keep on, if they slow down, they blow up, and everybody dies. Mm-hmm. So how do they keep going, even though they don't know what the hell they're even doing? So this is, I think, an ultimate kind of moment when you have to synthesize everything all at once, and it's nearly impossible. That's what I see as a real life and death kind of moment.
This is your Eowyn moment.
Yep.
So, okay. These are all 5 common character conflicts that you can deal with. Mm-hmm. But life or death seems to be the one that I would think you see the most often. Like, especially...
And can be in all the others, too.
As I was saying, especially in the superhero genre.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, how do you keep this one from, how do you do this one, and then if you're writing another book afterwards, how do you top life or death situations?
More life or death.
More life or death, yeah.
See, part of it I would argue
Life
is
or
you've
universe
got...
death.
First off, I would argue that you have to have your audience invested in the characters. Because honestly, I can think of certain movies where I've seen certain characters I really could care less if they lived or died, or if they were just doorstops. It's just bad. The same thing with books. I can mention a few, which I won't. Sorry, I almost made...
You made Chanel spit take.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. Do you need a tissue? The napkin?
I'm good. Thanks.
Okay.
You caught it all.
Where was I going with that? Anyway.
You were talking
And
about
then-
the death of a red shirt doesn't really matter.
Well, yeah. I wasn't quite going there, but yes. The death of a character which, especially if they don't even have a name, you don't even bother naming them in the story you're telling.
iRobot. Lots and lots of robots.
Yeah,
die.
lots and lots of robots
But
die.
the one robot that has a name we care about.
Yes.
Yes. Or any of samurai movies where they, okay, you're just a guy who's got a sword coming at me, I'm just going to cut you in half and be done. But where you develop a interest in the character, you develop a desire to hopefully be that character or want to that character. You're rooting for that character. For life and death become important.
Okay. Yes, I do think this is probably the most touched on and used throughout the rest of human history, if you want to call it that kind of stuff. Because life and death is the ultimate stakes.
Yes.
I mean, this is Robert Downey Jr. flying up into another dimension and then falling back through, and we don't know if he's going to make it or not.
Right.
This is, any hero in any journey. This is, life and death is also like in any rom-com, that moment where she's about to lose her job and the guy and everything else. That's life or death. That's her life is going to continue the way it is, or it's going to be completely shifted and completely different from the way that it'll ever be.
So symbolic death.
Yes. Well, I don't know. Some people take that really hard.
And that's why we have divorce.
Why doesn't he love me?
The reason I would say actually that the other one about the unfair that is actually more used is because this, in life or death, it's the ultimate stakes. I mean, it's almost at this point the ultimate cliche. But it's not a cliche. We don't consider it one because why else are we telling this story if it's not life or death? If it's not to the point of some great, emotional upheaval, then why are we even telling this story? Which is where I think we're stuck in now with Hollywood, which is where you have to blow up the planet every single time. And then you got to find out in the next movie a new way of blowing up the planet.
Yeah.
Another city to have another big fight in with another portal in the sky.
I mean, Avengers is kind of stuck like that. I mean, we're even joking now about lifting up part of the Earth and lifting cities up and slamming them down into the ground. Like, movies later, that's now a cliched joke. And it's like, that was like their ultimate, but now it's like nothing.
It's like, we already did that one.
Yeah, well, and in humans, I mean, how are we going to top that? So, I think in Hollywood this is a problem, but I think the reason is just because we can't tell a story without those gigantic stakes anymore.
And the good ones will have a new approach, a new backstory to make the life and death ending appropriate, to make it interesting, to make it matter.
Exactly.
And the rest of them that are just rubber stamps are the ones that we're laughing at right now.
Yeah.
Is it something different or the same thing?
I was going to say something that's important for all of these pillars goes back to what they are, character conflicts. You need to have a character that is well developed enough that your readers care about them for any of these to work. And I would say life or death, you can get away with not having as good of a character, but your readers won't care as much. Your viewers won't care as much. The example I was going to bring up was Suicide Squad. There are many problems with that movie. However, the characterization should be was not well developed enough that I cared enough that when these characters were in this life or death situation, I was like, yeah, whatever. That one died? Yeah, whatever. They might all die? Yeah, whatever. Because I didn't know about them well enough. I didn't care about them well enough to care that this life or death situation affected them individually.
Dude gets his head blown off.
I cared that the world, might end somehow nebulously.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's because I live here. I'm automatically going to care if the world is going to go to crap.
Not me.
However,
Are you saying that you don't live here, or that you don't care? If
I
the
don't
world goes to
care.
crap?
Blow it up.
I don't live here. I'm going back to Mars.
oh my
After the
goodness.
recording.
Oh, you're from Alderaan, aren't you? Anyway,
Don't say that. It's too soon.
oh, it'll always be too soon. So, the thing is, the world was going to end horribly. People were dying horribly. The Suicide Squad was going in to maybe save the world or something, and it was going to go horribly because it's all in the name. They're the Suicide Squad. But did I really care about their fight? No, because I didn't know them well enough to care about them as individuals.
I cared about Rogue One.
Without characters that you love, it's hard to care what's going on with them.
I have another example in also the DC universe about not caring, or they missed this great opportunity. It's the Superman reboot, I forget what it was called.
Man of Steel?
Probably.
Or Batman vs. Superman?
No, it's definitely the Superman alone. It's the one where General Zod shows up. But the thing is...
Man of Steel.
Man of Steel. So, point is, you have this orphan, he thinks he's the last son of Krypton. Then he shows up, and then Zod shows up. Guess what? All of a sudden, other members of his species, turns out he's not the last of his kind. This is a tremendous opportunity for Superman to grow as a character. He can really connect with these people and then feel utterly betrayed and have to choose between his adoptive planet and his home planet. But no. Zod comes in and says, turn him over or I'm going to destroy the world. He's a flat, two-dimensional character that Kal-El has no choice but to say, screw you, I like my adopted family better.
No offense, Kal-El was a little too flat character too.
Well, that too, but that's the point. They didn't develop either one of them, and they had such opportunities.
It's hard to develop Superman.
It really is.
But they had a chance and didn't.
One thing I was going to say
Smallville developed Superman.
Oh,
Well, yeah.
Smallville did fantastic.
Tom Welling forever, man.
Yes. Anyway, just really quick, I want to comment on this particular pillar because it's a problem with a lot of openings to stories. Some stories open up in the middle of a battle, and you have no idea who these characters are yet. You've had no chance to connect with them, and it's not impossible to do. It's actually well done in a lot of stories, be it movies or books or whatever. But it's also a huge speed bump if you don't do it right. So with that, yes?
So I guess my question, and the way that the article is worded, it seems as though they write this as the end-all be-all of character-driven conflicts, period. And I suppose that they're vague enough concepts that they could be present everywhere. But do you really think that they're all or necessary to everything? That it's not possible to have a decently done character conflict in a screenplay or a novel without resorting to these sort of, I don't want to say tropes, but
Well,
It'd be
you
hard to come up
asked
with
you asked two questions, and one of those questions I'm going to turn over to the audience, and I hope that they comment on Facebook or send us tweets or however, because we're all over the place. One, are there any forms of conflict we're missing that could be done or that you've done in your stories?
The answer is yes, by the way.
Yes. Please share. And we'll talk to Brad off mic. Because we're running along here. But the other one is aspect of your question is: can you write a story that does not have conflict?
No,
No.
these five
These
conflicts.
five.
Well, I'm saying
conflicts.
the other part of her question.
Jen already read that story.
Yeah, we heard that story read
Deliver the
aloud.
story. And the answer
No,
is, if
I'll
you-
talk to you about vampires another day.
The answer to your question, to that part, can you write a story that has absolutely no conflict?
You can, but it's a suck.
If you're really wanting to cure insomnia.
Well, let's just dispel that myth. You
Stream
can't write a
of
story without
consciousness.
Yeah, you were
right, you can't write a story without conflict. I'm just
Sure, it
trying
has
to
to be.
figure out
Oh, but
Are
people
these
have
the only kinds of conflict? Is this
Right.
it?
That's the ultimate question.
But here's another question: can you write a story with conflict, but not touch on any of these five?
Right.
That's
That's
what
what
she
her
asked.
question is,
That was she asked.
and that's what I would
But
like
that's
to
not
ask.
what you restated.
No, yes, it was.
No, it wasn't.
The first step.
Uh-oh.
It's
It's the first marital spat.
Going back to what I think I asked was turning this over to the audience. Please let us know if there's any other forms of conflict that we haven't covered, that you've included, or that you've read, or seen, or want to write about. Because we would love to hear from you. And on that note, final questions, statements. Have a great week writing. Tune in next week for yet another interesting topic in the writing industry. And season 4 is coming soon. Thank you.
Yay.
Vampirates had such potential in that name.
It is the greatest name. And it's the greatest
Vampirates.
concept.
It was epically
And next week
bad.
is what?
It
Oh,
was
but your
delightfully bad.
Your rendition was.
Did you know that Right Pack Radio has an international audience? How would you like to reach that audience in regards to your books, your book services, your author services, or more? Go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com and look under advertising for more information. If you don't have a script, that's not a problem. We will be happy to work with you. Once again, go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com for more information. The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her.